election yard here today. We're going to start talking already about the 2026 midterm elections. It may still be 2025 when we made this video, but we're starting to head towards the next election cycle. And I think over the next couple months, things are going to really start getting interesting because you know what? It's the United States. We never get any time off from any election cycles. People are already talking about the 2028 presidential cycle, and I am not there yet. If you follow us on social media, which you should totally do, by the way, if you follow us on social media, you will see we're starting to talk about some of the 2026 races, but you will not see me reposting any polls for 2028 yet. I am not there. Let's focus on 2026. So that's what we're going to do today. And specifically, we're going to talk about the United States Senate. So now the House has been getting a lot of attention recently because states have been gerrymandering their lines. You've got Republicans who started doing it, and then Democrats started to do it, and now both sides are doing it in multiple states. So let's put the House aside for a minute because I still think the dust needs to settle there in terms of redistricting. Let's focus on the Senate. Now, the Senate has, I think, been the chamber of lesser opportunity for Democrats going into this midterm election. And what I mean by that is, I think the Democrats have felt like, even with some gerrymandering, maybe favoring the Republicans a little bit, I think they still feel like they can retake the House in 2026. Whereas the Senate, I think they realize is going to be a tougher haul for them. So the question that we're going to ask today is, can the Democrats flip the Senate in 2026? And if they do, what are they going to have to achieve in order to do that? So let's start by putting on the screen now the state of the current Senate. So you can see that the Senate right now, there's 53 Republicans plus the tiebreaker with the VP. You got 45 Democrats and 2 independents, Bernie Sanders and Angus King, who caucus with the Democrats. So it's really 53 to 47 in favor of the Republicans. So if the Democrats were to retake the Senate, because they don't have the VP tiebreaker, the Democrats would need to pick up 4 seats to retake the Senate in 2026. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't sound so bad. We have seen some elections in the past 10, 15, 20 years where one party picked up more than that in a midterm election. But that's those elections, and this is 2026, because now we're going to show you where those seats are. So here on the screen with me now, you've got on the left side the Democratic seats that are at stake in 2026. On the right side, you have the Republican seats that are at stake in 2026. The asterisk means that that seat is open. The senator is not running for re-election. So you can see on the Democratic side, Illinois, Minnesota, and New Hampshire are open seats. On the Republican side, it is Alabama, Iowa, Kentucky, North Carolina. So you've got and you've also got Michigan there on the Democratic side. So you've got 8 open seats, 4 on each side. But you'll also notice there were a lot more on the Republican side. So again, you might be thinking, well, I guess if the Democrats are going to find a way to pick up 4 seats, maybe it's this year, but some of these aren't the most favorable states. So what we're going to do is we're going to start filling the map in a little further, kind of like what we did with the Electoral College map last year. Kind of fill in the ones that really are not in any danger, and then try to figure out where the key seats are. So we know that there are 22 Republican seats and there are 13 Democratic seats. Of course, 2 of these on the Republican side are special elections. So one of them is in Florida and the other one is Ohio. There would ordinarily be 33 seats up for election in this class, but there are 2 Republican special elections here. So 22 to 13. Let's zero the board out here. And now we'll put on the screen now, these are the seats that are being held over going into this election. And we're going to count the 2 independents as being Democrats here. So the Democrats have 34 seats, the Republicans 31. So if the Republicans win all 22 of theirs, they're back up to 53. If the Democrats win all 13 of theirs, they're back to 47. Pretty simple. Let's start filling in the map. These are the seats now highlighted in yellow that I think really are just not going to be that competitive. So we're going to knock out on the Democratic side Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Rhode Island. On the Republican side, Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Montana, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Wyoming. So a lot more Republican seats, but you notice I just called out a lot of Republican seats. So they were trailing. Now they're ahead 45 to 41. They only need 5 more. Out of all of these seats that are still grayed out, they only need 5 more of them to hold on to the majority. So you can already get a sense that the math does not really favor the Democrats this time. That's not to say that the Democrats have no path, but the math is definitely slanted against them. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take this a little further. I'm going to fill in some of the seats that I think are likely to stay with their current party. So, for example, Colorado is one of them. Minnesota is another one. Virginia is another one. And then you've got Alaska and Florida and Nebraska on the Republican side. Now, Nebraska, you might have Dan Osborne, the independent, running there again. And he ran a pretty good race last time. So we'll see if it's a pretty anti-Republican midterm environment, and it's really too soon to know that. There are clues, as we saw here in November 2025 in places like Virginia and New Jersey. There are definitely clues to that, but will it manifest itself in Nebraska a year from now? Too soon to say, but I still, for now, think it would be pretty safe to color in Nebraska for the Republicans. So what do we have left? First, it's 48 to 44 in favor of the Republicans. The Republicans only need 2 more. And the Democrats, at this point, need 7. So you've got Georgia, Michigan, and New Hampshire on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, you've got Iowa, Maine, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. So you got 3 seats on the Democratic side. You've got 5 seats on the Republican side for a total of 8. You can see right there, the Republicans only need to hold 2 of those. If they hold on in Texas and they hold on in Ohio or they hold on in Iowa, that's it. It's over. Meanwhile, the Democrats have to hold their seats as well. So like, for example, let's say Maine flips to the Democrats. Susan Collins loses. It puts the Democrats at 45, but they still need 6 more. And meanwhile, let's say Georgia flips from the Democrats. John Ossoff loses to the Republicans. Well, the Democrats still got to defend Michigan and New Hampshire. And then the Democrats have to run the table from this point on in order to retake the Senate. So it gets really, really difficult if they lose even one of their seats over on that side of the board. But let's talk a little bit more about these 8 seats in play. Georgia, Iowa, Maine, Michigan, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. So 4 of them are open seats. These are the seats that we think are the most likely to be in play. And the road to a Democratic Senate majority here, and this is part of what makes it so difficult, the road to their majority, it runs through a lot of red states. It runs through a lot of states that Donald Trump won in 2024. In fact, a lot of these states, he won 3 times. Iowa, he won 3 times. North Carolina, he won 3 times. Ohio, he won 3 times. Texas, he won 3 times. So you can see if the Democrats are going to be picking up most of these seats, which is what it would require, either holding their seats and then picking up a lot of those Republican seats, it's going to be a tough thing for them to do. Democrats 44, Republicans 48. In this scenario, Democrats need 7 more, the Republicans need 2 more. Now, let's just say that every Senate seat goes with the way that it voted in 2024. So the Republicans would pick up Georgia, the Democrats would pick up Maine, the Republicans would pick up Michigan. So the Republicans would be +1. It's 54 to 46. That's your ball game. So in order for the Democrats to start shifting that math, they have to hold on in Georgia. They have to win a seat like Iowa. They have to pick up Maine. They have to hold on to Michigan. They have to hold on to New Hampshire. They need Roy Cooper to win in North Carolina. And they got to hope that they can either pick off Ohio or Texas. Not going to be easy, but we're going to talk about these 8 races. So the first one, Georgia, this is John Ossoff running for a second term. Ossoff is definitely the top target of the Republicans in this cycle. this might be the most likely Democratic seat to flip. And I'm not saying it's going to flip, but it's the most likely to flip. So Democrats are going to go all in trying to hold on to this one. And the Republicans are coming at Jon Ossoff. The Republicans have lost a couple of Senate races here in the last handful of years now. They lost to Raphael Warnock twice, and then they lost to Ossoff. You had that situation a couple of years ago where both of them were running for election at the same time, and they both won their runoffs. That was a very, very interesting night politically in the United States. And now Ossoff trying to get reelected here. Gonna be tough, but the Democrats absolutely need to hold the seat. Iowa, Joni Ernst, she is retiring. Iowa is a state that seems to be trending redder, but there have been some things that have happened at the micro level in Iowa over the course of 2025. Like you've had some state legislative seats that have flipped to the Democrats on some pretty sizable swings. Now, keep in mind, too, there's state legislative special elections. So, the turnout's going to be lower. I'm curious to see how much effort the Democrats put into taking this seat. I actually do think with Ernst retiring, even though the Republicans seem to have a good candidate here, it's going to probably be Ashley Hinson, the Congresswoman. They do have a pretty good candidate there, but I do think Democrats would probably be wise to make a run at that seat. And their Senate majority probably depends on them winning a seat like that, as does winning a seat like this. This is Maine. This is Susan Collins. Susan Collins has been in the U.S. Senate since 1996. Democrats thought they had her in 2020 with Sarah Gideon running for the Democrats up there in Maine. They did not beat her. Well, now Susan Collins, she has been in the Senate for 30 years. And you may have heard the Democratic primary has definitely attracted some attention. I know we don't usually pay attention to the things that go on in Maine sometimes, and Maine is a beautiful state. You should totally go if you haven't gone. But you had, for example, Graham Plattner, who had quite the meteoric rise, and he became the darling of some Democrats, and then there was some stuff that came out about him, and now the Democratic governor of the state, Janet Mills, she is running for the seat, but she's in her late 70s, and she actually said in an interview that she might only serve one term. So the Democratic primary, I think, is going to be very interesting there, and then waiting is the big boss at the end of the video game, Susan Collins. So if Democrats don't beat Susan Collins in this one, they'll probably never get the chance, because I don't know that she would run for another term 6 years from now at her age, but I guess you never know. But the Democrats, I don't think, are going to have a better situation with potentially a Democratic wave year that might be building in the midterms. And Maine is definitely not a red state. It's purple-ish, blue-ish, but as I've said before, Maine is the kind of state you can't label them politically. Maine is very, very independent. Maine will do whatever the hell it wants politically. They could elect a conservative. They could elect a fire-breathing liberal. They could elect a moderate. They could elect anybody in between. And they have done that in recent times. So Maine's just going to do what Maine's going to do. But the Democrats will never have a better chance to beat Susan Collins than they do this year. And them winning the Senate absolutely depends on them winning in Maine. If they don't win in Maine, they are not flipping the Senate. There's no two ways about it. Now, Michigan, this is one that they really got to try to hold here. Michigan, Gary Peters is retiring. The Democrats have attracted some candidates. I believe Mike Rogers, who ran a couple of years ago against Alyssa Slacken, he is running again for this seat. Michigan hasn't had a Republican senator in a bit now. So, the Republicans want to try to flip this seat. The Republicans won Michigan in the presidential race again in 2024. So they're feeling decent about that. But the Democrats, I think, are going to put a lot into trying to hold on. And New Hampshire, I think an interesting Senate race is coming our way. The Republicans are probably either going to have John Sununu or former Mass Senator Scott Brown as their nominee. The Democrats, most likely it's going to be Chris Pappas. He's a congressman. You would think in a state like New Hampshire, the Democrat probably has a little bit of an edge. Even in years where Republicans have felt good about winning races like this in New Hampshire for the Senate, being very specific, the Senate. They have won governor's races, but they haven't done as well as they would have hoped. They've underperformed a little bit in those Senate races. So it's worth keeping an eye on. I do think the Democrats probably have a little bit of an edge here, but by no means is it a lot. Now, North Carolina, I will say this too. This is another one. The Democrats absolutely have to win, and the Democrats will never have a better situation in terms of flipping a North Carolina Senate seat as they do right now. Tom Tillis, the Republican two-term senator, he is leaving. He's had enough. He's out. Roy Cooper, the popular Democratic former governor of the state, he is running. Roy Cooper is probably one of the best recruits the Democrats are going to have anywhere in this Senate cycle in the United States in 2026. If Roy Cooper can't win this race, then no Democrat was going to win it. Definitely. The Senate math for the Democrats depends on them flipping this. And North Carolina has not been that good to Democrats on the federal level. On the state level, it has. North Carolina hasn't had a Republican governor in 3 terms now because you had Roy Cooper for 2 and now Josh Stein is the governor. You have to go back to Pat McCrory for the last Republican governor at this point. So Democrats really have a good chance, I think, to win in North Carolina. They have to. This has to be one of the 4 that they pick up. But again, if Roy Cooper can't win this race, then I'm not convinced that any Democrat was going to win it. And then Ohio, this one is interesting. This is one of the special elections, replaced J.D. Vance when he became the vice president. Ohio has definitely trended redder in the last decade since the rise of Donald Trump. There is no question about it. Ohio has trended much redder. Sherrod Brown is running again. He was knocked off in 2024. He lost a fairly close race, but the Republican surge in Ohio was just too much and he got knocked out. He is running again in 2026. He may, as we've said before, have a favorable environment to do it. Ohio is not really favorable to Democrats at this point, but in spite of that, you're looking at that. You saw that graphic we had up before. The Democrats, if they're at 44, they need to win 7 of the remaining seats. Well, this probably has to be one of them. I don't really see any way in which the Democrats retake the Senate and they don't flip Ohio. And of course, if the Democrats flip a Senate seat in Ohio, even if it is Sherrod Brown, who is very well known in the state, that's not going to be something that makes Republicans feel especially good. And then the last race we're going to look at, this is Texas. Now, Texas is interesting because you have John Cornyn running for another term. John Cornyn is being primaried. He is being primaried by 2 main contenders. You've got Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, and you've got Wesley Hunt, a congressman. Now, some primary polls have suggested that Ken Paxton might beat John Cornyn from his right. But then general election polls show that Paxton might actually be the weaker of the 2 candidates in the general election. And I believe on the Democratic side, they'll have Colin Allred, who ran for the last Senate race, and then James Tallarico, a state representative, who has been getting some more national attention in recent times. That is going to be a very interesting primary to watch too. So if Cornyn comes out of that GOP primary, I think he should be considered the favorite to win. If Paxton comes out of that GOP primary, Paxton is not as popular statewide. I think that's pretty clear. Paxton, I mean, it's Texas. The Democrats have been like Lucy and the football with Charlie Brown many times in Texas. Democrats have thought that they were going to do well in Texas and they didn't. So just assume that Paxton too would be the favorite, but I think he would be much less of one than John Cornyn would be. So this race definitely bears some watching. I'm going to keep it on this list for now of the seats in play, but I think a lot depends on what happens in the primary. And the primary in Texas comes up pretty early. So we will, I think, know fairly early in this 2026 cycle, like our general feel for how this race might go. So if it's Cornyn, the Democrats probably won't be too happy about that because I think Cornyn will be a favorite. The Democrats will probably have some hope, but I think they'd much rather run against Ken Paxton. So just to wrap this up now, the Democrats flipping the Senate in 2026, it is not impossible, but it will definitely be an uphill climb. You might say, well, they only need to pick up 4 seats, but it's not going to be easy because they're going to have to win some Senate races in some states that they don't normally win in. They haven't won in Iowa in a while. They haven't won in Ohio since Sherrod Brown was in there and he's trying to make a comeback. They haven't won in Texas in forever. They haven't unseated Susan Collins in all of their tries. They don't really win in North Carolina anymore, but they have a decent chance this time. They're going to have to flip some red states in order to do it. So the Democrats, they would need to hold on to their seats and then flip several states that Donald Trump won just a year ago. 4 seats might not seem that bad, but it is definitely going to be harder to get all 4 and then keep all of your seats. You're going to have to keep New Hampshire and Michigan and Georgia and then add some more going through red states. So it won't be easy. It's doable, but it won't be easy. And for more on the 2026 election, electionyard.com, like and subscribe, follow us on social media. We'll see you soon.